We'll get started. Thanks very much for all of those that have joined in, and also those that will listen in on this later. We've got Dr. Ross Macdonald from Cynata. Ross, I'll pass it over to you straight away. But for those that are tuning in, any questions, obviously type them in, and we'll answer them at the end. But go ahead, Ross. Thanks so much.
Great. Okay. Thanks very much, Simon, and thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning into this presentation on Cynata Therapeutics. Some of you already know the company, but just to assist in background, we are a cell therapy company that is developing novel therapeutics based around cells, using cells as medicine. And this is very much the next wave of medical treatment, as medical science has helped us understand the body's own repair and regenerative process and how stem cells are involved in that. That has allowed us to develop novel therapeutic agents from those discoveries and from that research. Our technology is based around a process for manufacturing these very, very exciting cell therapy products, as you'll learn more about in a moment. Let's just get started, of course, with our safe harbour statement here, and please do refer to our filings on the ASX platform or our website for further information on the company and before making any investment decisions. A few key facts about the company. As I explained, we are developing a platform technology to develop commercially scalable cell therapy products. We call that platform Cymerus. It's now at phase 2 ready stage based on some very, very exciting clinical data that we reported about 12 to 18 months ago, and that has allowed us to move forward to a robust phase 2 program. Market cap at the moment is around about $70 odd million. Obviously, we have, like all other participants in the market, suffered from the downturn over the past few weeks. A high last year around $1.85 based on the license transaction we completed with FujiFilm last year, and also a number of takeover offers, which I'll talk more about in a moment. Major shareholder is one of the largest investment funds worldwide, Fidelity International, hold just over 9%. A strategic partner, FujiFilm of Japan, hold just under 8%, and board and management and insiders are around 6%. The company is reasonably well cashed at the moment. We have around 8.4 million, and we burn roughly between 400 and 600 a month, so a good runway going forward. Turning to the next slide, the investment highlights of the company. Regenerative medicine and stem cell-based therapeutics is one of the most exciting areas in medicine today, and we are very, very well positioned to take advantage of that. We have a globally applicable technology that is scalable, and the essence of success in pharmaceutical products, of course, besides safety and efficacy, is an ability to manufacture the product at commercial scale. And these are very complex products. They are living cells, and so accordingly their manufacture is a logistic and practical challenge, and our technology addresses those challenges. We've completed an outstanding phase 1 clinical trial in patients with graft versus host disease, not healthy volunteers, but actual patients. And we're a world leader in that space. The first company in the world to complete a trial using this type of therapeutic product. We have an attractive and validated licensing business model. Rather than trying to complete development and commercialization of our products ourselves, we have a model that brings in commercial partners that have the resources and access to global markets that are necessary to effectively commercialize a pharmaceutical product. And a very exciting pipeline of high therapeutic potential targets. Just a quick primer here on what stem cells are. Obviously, we do see a lot in the media about stem cells and their potential application in medicine. But quite simply, we all arise from a single cell, a fertilized cell, that gives rise to all of the tissues within our body: muscle tissue, skin, bone, brain, etc., etc. And this relies on two elements or two facts. First of all, the ability of stem cells to reproduce themselves to create identical daughters or daughter cells. So one cell goes to two go to four, so on and so forth. And the second part of that is an ability of those original stem cells to differentiate and become the tissues that we recognize in our body. Mesenchymal stem cells, the particular type of stem cell that we and many other companies are working on, are a multipotent type of stem cell that have an ability to control many of the biological processes within our body, particularly those processes that lead to inflammation and tissue repair. So they're very much a central architect, if you like, of repair and regeneration in response to disease, infection, and tissue damage. As a measure of just how interesting mesenchymal stem cells are in therapeutic applications, there have been more than 1,000 clinical trials undertaken around the world investigating their potential utility, and many of those now are at late stage. Our own program moving into phase 2. We have some products already on the market, not we, but the industry. This is just a placeholder slide to remind you to take a look at our website, where you will find a short animation that in lay terms describes our technology. And I'd encourage you to visit that. Like I said, it's only about 60 seconds, but it is a useful explanation and description of the advantages of our Cymerus platform technology. Turning to the next slide, the key advantages of our technology are quite simple. First of all, the ability to manufacture a consistent product at scale. Consistency is one of the fundamental requirements of pharmaceutical product development. That is, the manufacturer has to ensure that every time they make a batch of product, it's exactly the same, so that the patient, the physician, the caregiver can have an expected result. So that means that if the product is made in Melbourne or New York, it has to be exactly the same. And this poses a very major challenge for cell therapy products. But the Cymerus technology ensures a consistent product is manufactured every time, and that's because we utilize one single donor, one time. This also has some advantages from a regulatory perspective, in that we don't have to keep changing donors and have the issues associated with different donor, different donation, and different cell product. Moreover, our technology appears to produce a highly potent product, probably because of the way we manufacture. And that's been borne out in our graft versus host disease clinical trial, where we required 2 infusions of our product per patient, whereas the comparator products typically take 8 to 12 infusions or doses. And this represents a major cost saving for the healthcare system, because obviously only 2 doses is going to be a lot more less expensive and a lot more convenient than 8 to 12 doses. Turning to the next slide, I mentioned in the introduction that we have a clear business model of partnering our technology, but we see 3 ways in which we can build shareholder value. We can build value in the platform independently by generating data, and ultimately data represents value in the pharmaceutical and biotech industry. It's only when products are shown to work, the generation of clinical data, where we can really reach those value inflections and demonstrate that the technology has applicability in commercial applications. We can also partner our technology, and our transaction with FujiFilm completed last year is one such example. And also last year we had a number of bids, one of which was announced, a takeover offer from Sumitomo Dainippon at $2 per share. We ultimately decided not to proceed with that transaction, as we really had difficulty finalising the completion documents, and ultimately stepped away from that. But our FujiFilm transaction does represent an attractive series of milestones for the company. Initially, we placed $3 million in equity to FujiFilm. Last year, we received a $3 million upfront license fee, and there'll be a further $40 or so million in additional milestones down the track. Double-digit royalty based on FujiFilm sales producing revenues to us at peak of around $30 million per year. They're FujiFilm's own figures. More importantly, perhaps, besides the revenue that we derive from this transaction, it represents endorsement by a big pharma company. And FujiFilm is one of the major players in the regenerative medicine space. better known perhaps for their photographic products, but that really was a focus of their activities about 20 years ago. But they have diversified substantially since then, and now stem cell and regenerative medicine is a very big part of their business activities. Cynata's now reached a very, very important inflection point in value generation. As I mentioned before, data drives value in our industry, and the generation of clinical data from our graft versus host disease substantially demonstrates the utility of our platform. In that trial, we saw an outstanding result, and I won't go into in great detail about what graft versus host disease, given the time that we have, but encourage you to look at our website for more information. But in essence, in this patient population that ultimately had a very, very grim outlook, we saw a complete response, that is a complete resolution of symptoms in these patients of more than 50%, an overall response of nearly 90%, and nearly 90% of the patients were still alive at the conclusion of the study. Bear in mind, as I said, this disease is ultimately has a very, very poor outcome, and progression to death is the usual endpoint for these patients. So being able to rescue more than half of them was a great result, not only for the company, but also for the patients, their families, and their caregivers. It also represented a world first. It was the first time in the world that an iPSC-derived cell therapy product had completed a clinical study, and Cynata remains the world leader in that space. Interestingly, many other companies, large and small, are now following in our footsteps, utilising a similar approach to cell therapy manufacture, recognising that a reliance upon donor-derived material is a flawed business model. The iPSC strategy is being adopted very, very widely by large companies like Takeda, Astellas, Blue Rock, now owned by Bayer. So this is a great position for Cynata to be in as the world leader in this field. Turning now to our portfolio, as I mentioned, we have a rich and robust phase 2 program with GVHD phase 2 expected to get underway with FujiFilm later this year. FujiFilm are financing all of the product development activities for that product going forward. So not 1 cent of it is on our P&L other than just our administration of our relationship with Fuji. We have an osteoarthritis program, hopefully getting underway very soon. That's a phase 2, one of the largest phase 2s in that using MSCs ever undertaken. That's financed substantially by the Australian government through NHMRC. And then a phase 2 in critical limb ischemia, or CLI, a complication that arises particularly in patients with diabetes, a growing epidemic around the world. On the right-hand side of the slide, you can see the areas in which we've generated compelling preclinical data. These disease targets show in animal models that our MSC products are very, very effective, particularly in cases like sepsis, very large unmet medical need, respiratory disease, diabetic complications like wounds, and other indications, as you'll see there. A great showcase for the company when it comes to partnering our technology and initiating dialogue with other companies. Cynata is now very, very well placed in a market for MSC therapeutics that's growing in attractiveness. There are now around 6 approved MSC-based therapeutic products on the market. There are multiple phase 3 trials being conducted by other companies around the world that potentially could lead to products on the market, adding to those 6 that are already there. I mentioned already that there's more than 1,000 clinical studies underway and growing evidence in biological models to show the role of MSCs in repair and regeneration. Cynata, for our part, is extremely well placed to proceed into that market. Many of the phase 3s that are underway represent multi-billion-dollar market opportunities, and of course, approvals in any of those areas will stimulate big pharma's interest in the MSC therapeutic paradigm. The demand for very large quantities of product will focus attention on the technology that we are developing that enables manufacture of these products consistently and reproducibly. Given the circumstances of the past month or two with coronavirus, also known as COVID-19, it would be remiss of me not to mention the exciting data that was recently announced out of a clinical study in this condition in China. And one of the problems associated with patients who have coronavirus infection that progress to more severe complications is the involvement of lung disease and pathologies associated with the lung. Those complications are ultimately fatal in many patients who succumb to coronavirus infection, but they're not unique to coronavirus infection. But MSCs have a particular role to play there because these conditions in the lung are driven by an excessive inflammatory response, the body's reaction to infection with coronavirus that ultimately leads to conditions like acute respiratory distress syndrome, or ARDS, pneumonia, sepsis, and cytokine release syndrome. For our part, Cynata has already generated data in sepsis and cytokine release, and we have a study underway that will report fairly soon in ARDS. Moreover, we know that we have a very potent immunomodulatory product here in our MSCs and our Cymerus platform. So in the recent history, we've now started engaging with multiple parties as to exactly how our technology can be brought to bear in patients who have severe complications of coronavirus infection or COVID-19. So watch this space on that. It's a challenging area because we're still bound by the governance that covers clinical trials. And so until red tape is cut, and obviously the Trump administration in the US is making moves in that direction to free up some of the constraints around the application of experimental medicines, but we're still a long way to go yet before that can be widely adopted. Many people ask me, well, where's the value upside for Cynata? And I can point to a homegrown Australian company that's been at the vanguard of MSC-based therapeutics, a company that many of you will know, Mesoblast. Meso, like us, has been hit recently with the downturn in share price, but nonetheless, Meso's market cap is something that we can look to say, well, look, they're a company that's doing well in this area. They've got products that are deriving revenues already in the market, and a pipeline that looks very, very interesting. We similarly placed a little bit behind, but obviously you can see the delta there between our market cap at around 70 million and Meso's at around 590 recently. So if you're looking for value uplift and you're looking for guidance on where the potential opportunity could arise and growth could occur for Cynata, then this is certainly one illustration of that. The market opportunities for our technologies in phase 2 or approaching phase 2 are illustrated on this slide. I mentioned earlier that FujiFilm's own expectations of product sales of CYP001, our product that we've licensed to them for GVHD, is around $300 million per year at peak. So that's their sales of this product, they're their own figures. Our own market estimates for CLI are about $1.4 billion of sales for a successful product entering that market. And of course, osteoarthritis is the biggie and needs no introduction. We all know someone or have it ourselves. Osteoarthritis is a major clinical challenge that represents a substantial cost to the healthcare systems around the world as patients with advanced disease ultimately go on to joint replacements, which have a high level of complications and morbidity. And obviously, if we can develop a therapeutic that delays surgery or even prevents it altogether, then that would be a great outcome. Cynata's got a busy year ahead with 3 phase 2s expected to commence, as you will see there. And so we expect some exciting news flow in the coming months as we move those programs forward. For their part, Fuji are planning the phase 2 in GVHD, which we expect will get underway later this year. And our CLI and osteo programs are moving forward. We had hoped to get them started by the conclusion of this quarter, but we're obviously getting very, very close to that now, so it's probably going to be within the next month or two. We'll have some more news on those programs. Then, of course, our preclinical programs also represent a rich pipeline for our partnering discussions, and we have multiple ongoing dialogue with various companies about their interest in our programs in the preclinical space and the clinical space as well. So I'd like to thank you for your attention, and if we have time for questions, I see we've perhaps got a few minutes. I'm happy for Simon to coordinate a Q&A.
Great, thanks so much, Ross. First one there is, what's the earliest that your AGVHD could be approved on the market? And knowing that Mesoblast is likely to get approval and be on the market this year, why would it be taken up by the market?
Could you repeat the question? Sorry, I didn't hear it properly.
Sorry. What is the earliest that your AGVHD could be approved and on market? And knowing that Mesoblast is likely to get approval and be on market this year, why would it be taken up by the market?
Well, I think there's always scope for competition in the market, and as I've indicated, we have some very interesting data showing a much lower dose, therefore a much lower cost, 2 doses versus 8 to 12 is a substantial cost advantage. FujiFilm's estimates range from around a launch of late 22, early 23, but we're working closely with the Japanese regulatory agency to determine more accurately exactly when market launch is likely to occur in Japan, which is probably the quickest jurisdiction to market, followed by other major territories like Europe and the United States.
And final question is, would you expect another takeover offer in the near term, particularly given the depressed share price?
Well, it's a difficult question to answer categorically. Of course, we are for sale every day of the week as a publicly traded company, and it would be somewhat disappointing to see an opportunistic bid emerge at these levels. As I mentioned before, the non-binding indicative offer submitted by FujiFilm, by Sumitomo last year at $2 per share was certainly an interesting offer. The undisturbed price then was at about $1.20, $1.25, so a decent premium. But yes, certainly as the MSC space becomes more and more interesting, data becomes more convincing, I'd be very surprised if we didn't see further interest in on the M&A side from the big pharma.
Great. Thanks very much for all of that, Ross. Your details are on the screen there if anyone had any further questions or wanted to get in touch. But we really appreciated making the time in isolation to present to us all.
Great. Well, good luck, everybody, and thank you very much for tuning in this afternoon, and look forward to any questions and follow-up as you see fit.
Thanks very much, Ross. Cheers.